Thank you so much. I'm going to give a talk right now about our Quarter 3 response bias project. And we are Dylan, Donovan, and Stephanie. So, in today's project, we have the goal of presenting the question of how will presenting the question about the amount of homework ETHS students have create bias in ETHS students. So, for example, in today's project, we asked two questions with one meaningful change between them. So the question was, do you agree or disagree with the National Students' Right poll that states ETHS students have a higher than average amount of homework or lower than average amount of homework? So as you can see, we asked these two questions, and we're trying to compare the proportion of students that answer a certain way between each question and compare them with each other to see if there's a bias between the two. So the way we did this is we randomly approached students in the hall and interviewed them. We tried to be as random as possible. Of course, it wasn't very easy to, it wouldn't be very practical or easy to assign numbers to every student in the school and then randomly pick those numbers and then approach those students. So we had to do it the best we could. So we got around this by interviewing 30 plus students. We interviewed about 106, and we tried to reduce bias by not getting our results from the same times or same places in the school, and we tried to also remove students from their peers because we felt that there might be some sort of peer pressure from being near your friends that might affect the way you answer the question. So here's two videos of our procedure. This left one is on question 1, which is the higher version. And this is for question 2, which is lower. So yeah, that's how we did it. So once we did that, we collected our results, and here's what we got. So as you can see here, we highlighted these two boxes because these are the two numbers that we're really comparing between our different proportions. So of course, if you disagree with the idea that ETHS students have a higher amount of homework, higher than average amount of homework, you're implying a lower than average amount of homework, which is of course what question 2 is trying to answer. We're trying to see if there's any differences between the proportions of students who answer either way. And so seeing we're comparing those two numbers. And yeah. So proportion 1 has to do with that first value of the number who disagreed, the proportion of students who disagreed for question 1, and proportion 2 has to deal with the who agreed for question 2. So we're comparing those two different proportions. And we're trying to figure out if there's a difference between the true proportions compared to the entire population of ETHS students. So our null hypothesis was that there is no difference between the different proportions, and our alternate is that there was a difference between the proportions. And we tested this at the significance level of 0.05, that alpha value right there. So we had to make some assumptions for our test. So we had some random sampling. We randomly picked students from ETHS. As we said before, we tried to, not have much bias in the number of students we picked. We tried to pick a wide variety of students to try to get more, to try to get a more inclusive data set of the entire ETHS population. And then we also have to do our normal distribution sampling. So we used the test of NP is greater than or equal to 10, and we pooled our data into one as you required in this test we were doing, and we got values that are both greater than 10 for both NP and N1 minus P. Therefore, approximately a normal distribution is appropriate for our normal sample for our sampling distribution. And finally, we had a sufficiently large independent population. So there are more than 106 times 10 students that attend ETHS. There are more than 1,060 students that attend ETHS. Therefore, we have a sufficiently large population to sample from. So we ran a 2 proportion z-test in this test, and we got a test statistic of around 0.2541. That's our z-value. And then from the p-value from that, we got a p-value of 0.7993. So because our significance level was lower than the p-value, we failed to reject the null hypothesis. Therefore, there's sufficient evidence that we could randomly, picking people from the population, we would randomly expect that if our null hypothesis is true, there's about an 80% chance that we receive a sample that looks like ours. So there is significant evidence that exchanging the word higher or lower in our question, there is insignificant evidence that exchanging the word higher or lower in our question will affect the proportion of ETHS students who believe we have a lower than average amount of homework. So some things we could have done better or expanded upon is that we could add more data. There are a lot more than 1,060 kids at the school, so we could have added more people to our sample in order to increase the accuracy of our results. Moreover, we could also replace the word lower with average. As maybe you kind of noted, it's not really clear that that a student who might say that who disagrees with the idea that we have a higher than average amount of homework might be implying we have an average amount of homework, which isn't the same as saying we have a lower than average amount of homework, which is kind of a oversight on our part, but I still believe that that's kind of the same idea there. So I think that's okay. And then we could also see if does the questionnaire affect the results. So going in our data a little further, if we break it down based off the person, so we each split up the number of questions we had to ask to around 20 each, and as you can see here, there seems to be inconsistencies between the different people that ask. So for example, pretty much almost everyone who agreed with question 2 came from either Dylan or Donovan, while only one person came from me, and no one said they agreed for question 2 with Stephanie. So this is very odd. So it might lead to later studies which see perhaps the person who asks the question affects the people who agree or disagree with the certain questions. So that might be an interesting thing we could look into to see if maybe there's some bias based off the person that asks. So thank you for listening to our talk. I hope that you understand what we tried to find and what we found. We found that, of course, there was not significant evidence that the usage of higher or lower in our question changed the outcome of people's opinions about the question, about how much homework ETHS students have. So thank you for listening, and have a great rest of the week and a great break. Thank you.